This is the second Sunday we are reflecting on this new sermon series in preparation for Easter. Born of water, the creation of God's people. This is a sermon series based on the book of Exodus. And last Sunday, Pastor Jaime started talking about the context, the general context of the book of Exodus. And today we will continue. We'll talk today about this very remarkable incident called the burning bush and Moses. Exodus chapter 3. But before that, I'd like to read two verses on Exodus 29, because I think that these two verses, they bring the context and the perspective we need to understand the book of Exodus as a whole. Exodus chapter 29, verses 45 and 46, it says that I will dwell among the people of Israel and will be their God. And they shall know that I am the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, that I might dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. This is a very important passage. And in here we can understand better the purpose of this book. Many times because we see lots of great miracles in this book, like the burning bush, we'll see this today, or the plagues, or the provision of manna, or the parting of the Red Sea, all these great miracles that show the deliverance of the Israelites from Egypt. We tend to think that the main theme of this book is deliverance. But this text shows us that the deliverance is not the ultimate goal. Deliverance is a means to an end. So the book of Exodus is not simply about deliverance. It's important to understand that. Exodus is not simply an escape room story. It's not just about freedom, escaping from a bad situation. No. The ultimate goal is not that. We can say that Exodus is about covenant. The promise that God would live among his people. Exodus is about the identity, the creation of a people as God's people. They needed to understand, like we just read, that God was the one who was delivering them. They need to understand who God is. And they need to live a consecrated life before God. They should understand that there was a covenant between them and God. And they should live accordingly. So, one interesting fact about this book is that we call it Exodus. But you know, Exodus is a Greek word. And as you know, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, not in Greek. So Exodus is not the name of the book, the original name of this book. This was the name given by the translators of the Septuagint, which is the Greek version of the Old Testament. There we have this name, Exodus, which means going out or departure. The emphasis of this name is on the deliverance. But when we go to the Hebrew, when we go to the Old Testament, the original, we have another interesting fact. As you know, the first 5 books of the Bible, we used to call them the Torah. In the Hebrews call these first books the Torah, the law. And in Hebrew, the names of these books are the first sentence of these books. For example, the book of Genesis, the Hebrew starts saying, Bereshit bara Elohim, which means, in the beginning, God created. So the name, the original name of Genesis, Bereshit, which means in the beginning. Of course, the Greek name, Genesis, is exactly the same. There is a correspondence. But when we come to Exodus, it's different. Because the name in Greek, Exodus, going out, departure, has nothing to do with the original name in Hebrew. As you see, the book of Exodus starts with this sentence. These are the names, and this is how the book starts. In Hebrew, there is a word, and this word is shmot. Shmot, which is the names. And when the Hebrews talk about name, they are talking about identity. They are talking about the essence of a person. So when the book of Exodus is actually the book called The Names, the emphasis is in the identity of a people. You cannot change the name without changing the focus of the book. So you should know that this book is about the identity of a people, the creation of a people, the way that God revealed himself to a people to show them who he was and who these people should be in covenant, in relationship with this God. If we just focus on deliverance, we have a very utilitarian religion. What do you want? What do you want? Do you want God or what God gives you? You can have many things from God. If you are in a very bad situation, if you need deliverance, then you read the book and you say, okay, in the same way that God opened the sea for these people, he will open the way for me. And I have seen many people that experienced deliverance, but then after that, they forgot God. They were looking for God during the trouble, during a bad situation. They came and they prayed and they asked prayer. They were in need of something. And then when they got what they wanted, vanished. Because they wanted not God, but what God could give them. I need to say that God is not a means. God is not there just to give you what you want. God is there to show you that there is a covenant. He wants a relationship. Otherwise, you will be like the prodigal son. He wanted the money, father's money, but they didn't want God's company. Hey, God, show me the money. Give me deliverance. But then I will go my way. No, this is not what Exodus is about. Exodus is Shemot, the names. Exodus is about the identity of a people. And the best way we see this is in Exodus chapter 3. When we come to the very known story of the burning bush, here God will reveal himself to Moses and to Israel. So if you have a Bible, you can open in our text this morning, Exodus chapter 3. I'll read verses 1 to 15. As you can see, the passage, the incident, the narrative is long. It goes from chapter 3 and chapter 4. I don't have time here to read all the narrative, all the text, but I'll read the first 15 verses. Exodus 3, 1 to 15 says, Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God, which is another name for the Mount Sinai. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me. And I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed them. Come, I will send you to the Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to the Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He said, But I will be with you. And this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Then Moses said to God, If I come to the people of Israel and say to them, The God of our fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, Say this to the people of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name. Remember the title of the book? The names. This is my name forever. In this I am to be remembered throughout all generations. I'd like to emphasize and highlight here two aspects of this passage. The first one is the timing, the moment, the context that God appeared to Moses. Because we don't have this information in this book, but many years later, in the New Testament, the book of Acts, we have this passage in Acts chapter 7. 40 years later, in the desert near Mount Sinai, an angel appeared to Moses in the flame of a burning bush. This information we don't have here in the book of Exodus, but we know by Acts that this happened 40 years later. 40 years later, what? You remember, Pastor Jaime mentioned that last Sunday, that Pharaoh's daughter adopted Moses and raised him as her own son. And Moses was taught all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was powerful in both speech and action. Moses was created, raised in this palace as a rich man, a powerful man. He received the best education. At the same time, he knew who he was, a Hebrew. And then, in Acts, we read in a very summarized sentence that one day, when Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his relatives, the people of Israel. He saw an Egyptian mistreating an Israelite. So Moses came to the man's defense and avenged him, killing the Egyptian. So when Moses was 40, he had the initiative to come and to deliver his people. He was saying, no, it's not fair what the Egyptians are doing with my people. I am one of them. So I'll go there, and with my influence, I will deliver them. So Moses, at 40, we can say he was powerful in both speech and action. He was influential. He was strong and brave enough to kill an Egyptian soldier. And he was proactive. He saw the need and he was there and he went to solve the problem. But the consequence was not as he wanted. We read in Acts, Moses assumed his fellow Israelites would realize that God had sent him to rescue them, but they didn't. Moses then fled and became an exile in the land of Midian, where he became the father of 2 sons. And then the text will say, 40 years later, and then you can contrast these two Moses. One is this very strong, influential, powerful, proactive man. Moses at 40. But now, 40 years later, living in the desert as an exile, Moses is a different man. We can find here that Moses now is a poor and humble man. The text says that he was keeping the flock of his father-in-law. He was so poor that he didn't have any sheep. Even what he had was his father-in-law's. He was a poor man, not more a rich man, a royal man. Physically old, 80 years old. And he will say now, I am slow of speech and tongue. And this contrasts with the information that we had, that he was powerful in both speech and action. But now, 40 years later, he is slow of speech and of tongue. He had no influence anymore in Egypt. He is forgotten there. Nobody remembers, Moses, who is that? No. And he has no ambitions. Now Moses was humbled by God, forgotten. He said, okay, I tried my best when I was 40. But now, I don't have more. This is not for me. And then, during this time, God comes and calls Moses for the task that he tried to execute 40 years before. And what we can learn about the timing of this incident in the burning bush, we can learn that it was not Moses delivering his people with God's help. It was God delivering his people with Moses' help. Do you remember the first text we read today? The text in Exodus chapter 29. The text says, and they shall know that I am the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt. There is important to understand here, brothers and sisters, that God delayed 40 years to say and to show, to make evident that it was not Moses, the deliverer. It was him. Moses was the tool, was the instrument in God's hand, not the other way around. The Apostle Paul will say, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. This timing shows us that God was intending to show everybody, are you doing this with this man? Yeah, I am. Because it's not him, it's me. Sometimes we feel very weak and unable to do God's work. But then we need to remember that we are instruments. Doesn't matter if we are good or bad. The powerful is not our power. There is a very famous quote from Martin Luther, and he says, God creates out of nothing. Therefore, until a man is nothing, God can make nothing out of him. Sometimes in our lives, God brings us to the desert, and we are humbled by God. And we become nothing. We lose our influence, our power. We lose sometimes our money. We lose our jobs. Sometimes we lose our family. And we are like Moses at 80. But as a comfort to you, you need to remember that God called Moses when he was 80, not when he was 40. Because God wanted to show that he was the one delivering his people. This is the first thing I'd like to highlight, and I'll bring some implications of that in a moment. The second thing I'd like to highlight is the revelation of God. How does God reveal himself in this passage? You remember that Exodus is about a covenant. Exodus is about the names, who God is and who his people should be. in relation to him. So how does God reveal himself? This is the passage where we have maybe the most precise self-revelation from God in the Old Testament. First of all, God reveals himself as a holy God. When Moses sees the burning bush, he is attracted by that, and he comes closer to see what was that. But then he hears the voice, Moses, Moses. And then he hears the voice, do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. The first word that Moses hears is that, hey Moses, back off. Stay back. You need to know that this place is special. And sometimes I wonder, because probably Moses went to this place many times. And maybe this was a new place for Moses. But on that day, the ordinary place became the extraordinary place, because Moses was confronted with God's presence. What makes a holy place is not the place, but it is the presence. If God is there, the place is holy. If God is not there, the place is not holy. In this way, you can say that every place you go, in your job, in your work, home, all of these places, they are holy places. So you should slow down. Take off your sandals. This is a respect. This is a way to say, hey, don't bring any impurity to this place. When here in Canada, I learned that there is this culture of entering a house, we need to take off our sandals, because we want to keep the house clean. Don't bring any dirty from outside to this place. God is saying, hey Moses, don't bring your dirty to this place. Take off your sandals. And then verse 6 says, and Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. So this is the first reaction. And this shows us that God is holy, separated, absolutely holy. Isaiah will say, holy, holy, holy. Perfect. There is no imperfection in God. He is perfect in all details. The first thing, God is holy. And then we go to the second characteristic of God's character. God is a faithful God. The text says, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now God starts revealing himself, and he will bring a historical reference to Moses. He will say, hey Moses, have you heard about Abraham? Oh yeah, I remember. I remember the stories about Abraham. I remember about Isaac. I remember about Jacob, Joseph. We went to Egypt because of Joseph. Yeah, Moses, I am this God that called Abraham. And you know, Moses, I made a covenant with Abraham 600 years ago. 600 years ago, Moses, I called this man called Abraham. And I said, I will bless you. I'll make you a great nation. I'll make your name great. And now I am here because I will accomplish my word. I will accomplish my promises, Moses. What is happening now in Egypt is not something new for me, unpredictable. No, I predicted. I said that this would happen. You want to see this? Genesis 15. When God talked to Abraham, and God made a covenant. See what Genesis 15 says. Then the Lord said to Abraham, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. Brothers and sisters, this was 600 years before Moses. God talking to his friend Abraham. And he said, you know, Moses, you are here today because I am about to accomplish this promise, this word that I said to Abraham 600 years ago. Live this moment. Understand what you are. You are not the center of the universe. You know, Moses, you know your story? When you were took off out of the waters of Nile, I was there. I've been with you all your life. I am the God of your father, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because I am a faithful God. I don't forget my word. What I am about to do is not because you are a good guy. It's not because your people is a good people. No, it is because I made a covenant with my friend Abraham. I called him, and I will accomplish my promises. And we can see this as a symbol, brothers and sisters, of the gospel. Because when God calls us, we can understand that God blesses us, not because he is faithful to us. First of all, God is faithful to his word. It not depend on you, depend on God. God blesses us because of his son, Jesus Christ. Because God made a covenant with Jesus. We are blessed in Jesus. So how does God reveal himself? As a faithful God, a holy God, a faithful God, and then we can also see a merciful and compassionate God. Verse 6 says, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings. Notice, I have seen, I have heard, I know their sufferings. God is looking after these people in this situation. And I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land. God is merciful. God saw the affliction of these people. And God is not indifferent. God is not unaware of the situation. Sometimes we think and we say, oh God, are you seeing this? Are you aware about this? Many times our prayers are wrong in the way that we want to offer a lot of information to God. Hey God, do you know our friend, he is in this and this and this and this and this situation. No, God knows. God knows your affliction. God is aware of what is happening in your life. Because God is merciful and compassionate. This is the way that God reveals himself. And then we have the big window of revelation in this passage. We already saw that God is holy, that God is faithful, God is merciful and compassionate. And now we will see something absolutely stunning, absolutely different, and absolutely new. God is near and present. When Moses said, hey God, okay, let's suppose, God, I'll go there. And they will ask, who is sending you? You are here with what credentials? And then, see what the text says, verses 11 and 12. Moses said to God, who I am, that I should go to the Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt. He said, but I will be with you. I will be with you. God is holy, but he is not distant or indifferent. Moses, the question you are doing is the wrong question. The question, Moses, is not who you are. The question is who I am, Moses. Because you were not doing there as a savior. I am the savior. You were doing this, you were going there as an instrument, as a messenger. You need to understand that, Moses. It's not because of you. I think you already know this beautiful song from Casting Crowns. Who am I? And he says, not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. It's because of God, it's not because of us. And then we see here in the text, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 7, we have an incredible affirmation, statement. For what great nation has a God as near to them as the Lord our God is near to us whenever we call on him. God is near. Psalm 145 says, the Lord is near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in truth. God is near. God is holy, it's true, but at the same time, God decided to come down, to come near of us. And the essence of God is defined by this. Because God said to Moses, verse 14, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. I am is the name of God. Now, pay attention to that. In English, when I say I am, period, without a complement, I am, period, I understand that I am saying, you can understand that I am saying I exist. When I say I am talking about my existence. I'm real. I'm a person. I am. But in Hebrew, it's different. In Hebrew, the word has a different meaning. Because in Hebrew, when they use this word, I am, in this way, this expression, he's talking not only about existence, but about manifestation. about an existence that becomes visible. We are talking about glory. Example, in Genesis chapter 1, we have the creation narrative. And there we can read this text. There was light. There be the light, and there was light. What the book is saying is not just that the light came to exist, but the light came to be visible, manifested to all. So when God is saying, I am Moses, God is saying, hey, I not only exist, Moses, I am real, but I am also near to you, present to you. I am not there in the heavenly place, distant. No, I am here, near to you. I am visible to you. I am present to you when you need me. I am. So God is holy, faithful, merciful, and compassionate, but God is also near and present. And here we come back to our text in the beginning that says, I will dwell among the people of Israel, because I am. I am near, I am present. I will dwell among the people of Israel, and I will be their God. And they shall know that I am the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt. It's not Moses that brought them out. It was me, because Moses was an old man without influence, and he was just my instrument, that I might dwell among them, because I am the Lord their God. So, as you know, the book of Exodus, like I said, has many spectacular miracles. Crossing the Red Sea was like the big picture in the Old Testament. But we can say that the greatest miracle of Exodus, and maybe of the entire Bible, is how a holy God would make a way for sinful people to dwell with them. Because He is. He found a way to come and to make a covenant and to reveal Himself to these people. And to say, hey, I am your God. You need to understand that we have a relationship. We have a covenant. The first part of Exodus is about deliverance. But the biggest part of Exodus is about the building of the tabernacle. And the tabernacle is the visible manifestation of God's presence among the people. The tabernacle was God with us, Emmanuel. The tabernacle represents Jesus. The tabernacle is the covenant of God with us. What are the implications for us? And then I will finish here. I have just 2 slides for you with the implications of this passage. Once you understand that God is what He is, and that you are what you are, you have 2 reactions, implications before God. Number 1, back off. This is the first implication. Because God is holy, you should be very cautious in your relationship with God. Don't expect to have all answers. Don't expect to manipulate God. Don't expect that you will feel satisfied with all the situations. Understand all things in your life. Traveling walks will say that in our fallen state, we may prefer a vision of a God who affirms the general direction of our lives, but doesn't say or do anything unexpected. A God who doesn't ask too much of us. A God who is easygoing and devoid of mystery. No. If you are dealing with the real God, this God who is, the first step, take your sandals off. Back off. Hey, be cautious. Because fire attracts our attention, draws our attention. But fire is dangerous. Is dangerous. This is the first implication. And then the second implication, and we live in this tension. This is a tension when we have a real relationship with God. At the same time, we should back off, but at the same time, God will say, move forward, because I am with you. It's interesting that in verse 5, God says to Moses, do not come near. And then in verse 10, God says, come near. How is that possible? Do not come and then come. Because once I call you, you can come. You can be bold in God's presence. You can obey God. Hey, Moses. And you see, Moses will give at least 5 excuses to not go to Egypt. He'll say many things. Oh, it's not for me. But God will say, you go there. Because it's not you, it's me. So you can move forward in God's name. You can move forward because God is with you. God is I am. And you have this identity. As I said, Shmot is this book. The names. God revealing his name to Moses, and these people learning who God is and learning who they were in this relationship with God. I'd like to finish with a very short movie, and I'll call the worship team here. We will sing a last song about the faithfulness of this God. Remember, God is this God that said, I am the God of Abraham. Your story didn't start with you. If you are here today, it was because way before you, God made a covenant with a people and called you. So God is faithful, first of all, to himself, and then, as a consequence, to us. Let's see this video, and just after that, we will sing the last song, and we will pray and finish the service.
A crimson sacrifice stained the cross. The aroma of redemption rose to the throne to quench the stench of sin. And so it was finished before it all began with, let us make man. And somehow our image became so distorted, and the God in us became so distracted by the sound of the pulse in our veins. We moved through the temple dripping permanent stains, overturning thrones where God used to reign, diagnosing our symptoms and medicating our pain with flesh. I am the drug addict. I am the prostitute. I am the alcoholic. I am the destitute. I am the businessman. I am the preacher. I am the one beating my wife. I am the teacher. I am ready to take my life. I'm going to bomb my school today. I want to take your daughters away. I am the one who wants to be a man. I am the one wishing I were a lady. I am the one who never thinks I can. I am the one aborting my baby. I am the depressed. I am the broken. I am the abandoned. I am the orphan. I am the dictator. I am the terrorist. I am the atheist. I am the priest. I am the residence where the Antichrist holds the lease. I'm trapped in a prison I created for myself. I'm groping for light in darkness. I am the one who needs your help. Jesus, I am the one who needs your help. I am the one who hears your heart. I am the answer to your cry. I am the voice deep in your spirit declaring, you shall live and not die. I am the beginning. I am the end. I am grace in the midst of sin. I am a very present help in the time of need. I am so great, I must swear by myself. So trust and just believe. I am the one who formed you in your mother's womb. I am the one who ascended from a borrowed tomb. I am a mighty God. I am the Prince of Peace. I am the great I am, purchaser of your lease. I am the deliverer. I am the healing balm. I am Genesis. I am Revelations. I am Proverbs. I am Psalms. I am wonderful. I am a counselor. I am the great high priest. I am the advocate intercessor. I command the storms to cease. I am the death and the resurrection. I am the way, truth, and the life. I alone am Jehovah. I am Jesus the Christ. I stepped down into earth from the divine. I took off eternity and put on time. I covered myself in the darkness of flesh to reveal the light and take possession of death. I breathed my last so you could take my name. I poured out my blood to quench the flame. Will you come? Will you run to me? My arms are open wide. I'm hanging on the mercy tree. A crimson sacrifice stained the cross. The aroma of redemption rose to the throne to quench the stench of sin. And so it was finished before it all began with let us make men.